Athlete Builder back at it. My guest today has spent 31 plus years in the weight room. Missouri, Houston, K-State, Oklahoma, Ohio State. He coached Max Scherzer, three-time Cy Young and World Series champ, plus Tanner Houck, 37 All-Americans, Heisman, Outland, Butkus winners, 10 top 5 in the NFL picks. Over 100 of his athletes were drafted in the NFL, more than 80 into Major League Baseball. And he was a national champ himself as a player at Oklahoma under the legend Barry Switzer. Big shout out to our guy, PI, Dr. Pat Ivy, for connecting us. Scott Bird, welcome to the show. But before we get all into that, Scott, what's your 1985 freshman walking into Barry Switzer's Oklahoma, holy shit, what the hell did I just get into moment?
Yeah, that was especially growing up on going to games at Oklahoma as a kid and just always wanting to be a part of that. And you walk in there and yeah, all of a sudden you see some of the guys that you've watched, back when you were in high school, and it was pretty, to look down and see that across your chest was kind of surreal at the moment. But then, as you get going, you realize, hey, these are just regular people like, my other friends that I had. They're just really good football players.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, initially it was a little surreal, but, I still have some friends that I still talk to today from that group.
Was there a rude awakening moment?
You know, I I'm sure there was. I don't remember off the top of my head. There was probably several actually. But I do remember a few times getting stuck there on scout team and yeah, having to face some of our all-American tight ends that believe it or not at Oklahoma we had some, but yeah, those guys trying to, I don't know, prove a point against some of us that I'm like, hey, beating me is not gonna get you on the field faster. But there were some of those, but luckily not too many.
And the position that you played?
Well, believe it or not, I was a place kicker.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a place kicker. So ironically, there was a guy I played against in high school. It was an all-state player. He was our starting punter, and we had played again, but both of us, and we had a bunch of kickers that loved the weight room, and I just happened to be the biggest. So I would get thrown out as a scout team defensive back or something every now and then, just to help with some numbers, and so that was fun at times, and at times not so much fun.
Gotcha. Been around a lot of talent, All-Americans, Heisman winners, and Scherzer and a few others. What's, if I said top one or two ridiculous funny moments that you wouldn't believe? Hey Jim, you want to believe this one time? How do you
Oh wow, wow, that's I don't know. Some of them I don't know if I could tell.
right?
I will. I had one. Maybe I won't mention the name. I'll just mention the event
That's fine.
that had came in and had a ankle kind of banged up and said he'd slipped on the ice. Um, at outside the facility. When we found out later that he actually had jumped out the window of his girl's apartment, and that's where some things happened. We've had like say a friend of mine once, we talked about we should write a book about a lot of these things. We said, one, we'd have to change all the names.
Mhm.
Two, most people wouldn't believe the stories are true. And some people actually might want us killed just because we were telling the stories. But there's been, golly, there's been so many. And it's funny, you mentioned PI. We still joke about this one today. We had a player when we were at Missouri. We're in the indoor ready to start our warm up for our group, and this player comes running in late, and we're asking, he said, "Why are you late?" And he said, "Man," he goes, "it's snowing outside." Or I'm sorry, let me rephrase. The whole reason he was late, he had different socks on, and we were trying to figure out. And part of the deal was with Coach Minkle, you had to have the right socks, the right shorts, everything had to match. And we said, "Hey, why do you got two different socks on?" And that was his response: "Man, it's snowing outside." And Pi and I looked at each other like, okay. And so we never, finally, honestly, years later, he told us the reason he was so scared about being late. They just reached in the drawer and started grabbing stuff. But man, there's, like I say, it's one of those I'll probably remember 6 or 7 of them after we finish. But like I say, there's been quite a few over the years, and some of us get to talking and we start helping each other reminisce and remember some of these things, and brings back some fun times. That's for sure.
What's with every year, it seems to be a bigger and bigger deal, sports. And then when you add in college game day, you add the craziness of the fans. It just keeps escalating. Bigger stadiums, bigger sound systems. Everyone dresses up. Talk about a venue where you're like, you will not believe how wild, how rowdy, how insane this night was. You know, I went to Purdue, and it was during Joe Tiller when they had some decent years. And when they would tailgate and have a noon or 1 o'clock game, that's one thing. But if you have a 7 o'clock game and you've been drinking all day, like it's a whole different animal. So on a national championship run, and you've been coaching people for decades, talk about a night or just a venue where you're like, Jim, this was insane.
Well, I mean, obviously, the national championship game was pretty, but that stadium still, you got, it's kind of half and half type. But in speaking of half and half, Oklahoma, Texas, you always hear talking about coming down the ramp at that game, and you come down the ramp, and there's half the stadium's orange and half the stadium's red, and it's split right down the middle. I mean, it just doesn't be, I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. Especially when you can walk back up the ramp a winter. It's a long walk when you don't.
Yep.
I was fortunate enough to be a part of some big ones at Ohio State with Ohio State, Michigan. We played Notre Dame there once while I was there. That was pretty phenomenal. Believe it or not, one of the top moments, I say the one, maybe top two or three loudest moments that I've been a part of was in 2000 with Oklahoma, and we go to play at Kansas State. It's Coach Stoops and some of his assistants had been at Kansas State, their first time being back, and we're on what was called the Murderers Row or something that year. It was like we had to play number 1 Nebraska, top 10 Kansas State, top 10 Texas, all in the same month, and we go up there and we are behind, and they block one of our, I'm sorry, I don't even remember the score. They block a punt, and the sound, you hear the punter hits foot, hit the ball. You hear the ball hit the guy's hand. They scoop it. And for the split set, you can't hear a thing. Now, you got to remember, they only have like 55,000 people. But it was the one moment that I think it all happened that still to this day stands out as one of the all time. But I will say I've had a chance to experience some Saturday nights in Neyland Stadium at Tennessee. And I said, nothing, I don't know if it gets any better than that place at night. On a Saturday night SEC game, that place rock and rolls. And like you say, when they've had all day to get ready, the Tennessee fans are ready. That's for sure.
My son played at Ball State, and he just finished up his career. And his first game he ever got in was in year 3, and it was a night game at Tennessee.
Wow.
And it's not like Ball State was a threat. I think they lost by 50. Um, but it was his first night he ever got in there, and he was in on a tackle in the first series and or late in the game. So that's an outstanding place. And I like it's not like we're coming from Alabama or Florida where we're a threat to Tennessee where the fans are going to be hostile. You know, so the fans, like, they were showing me and my wife the way home. Like, hey, here's your best route to your hotel. Or we're walking from the hotel bar to the game. We're like, oh, just take this trolley. It's free. You can ride with us. Like, we have never been to a city where the fans were so nice to us. Knoxville was outstanding. So for those playing along at home, who do we really have here? And with Scott Bird, again, shout out Pat Ivy, Director of Field Experience, Logan University, Master Strength Conditioning Coach, been coaching 31 plus years. And it was at Mizzou, Houston, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Ohio State. Like I said, Max Scherzer, 3 Cy Young Awards, World Series champ, Tanner Hawk, 39 All-Americans, Heisman, Outland, Buckus winners, 10 top 5 NFL picks. So over 100 people drafted in the NFL, over 80 drafted MLB. Scott Bird clearly makes an impact getting people better mentally and physically. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. It's certainly an honor to be here.
Mm. So from national champ player to one of the best strength and conditioning resumes in the country, and one of the best ones I've seen. What's the why that keeps you in the weight room for 3+ decades?
I think I'm crazy. No.
I got nowhere else to go.
Yeah, I just didn't know what else to do, but no, I think it's the joy you get of just seeing players, develop, and you see them from the time. Again, you mentioned Max Scherzer, and to see his career that he's had in professional baseball, but also remembering when he got in there as a freshman at Missouri, and just when you have a chance to see these players develop and go on and do some great things, and there's been just as many, quite honestly, have great careers in other things, but the lessons they learn from things that just the work ethic, the accountability piece and thing. I mean, I have very fortunate, and Pat and I share these with each other when we get them from time to time. But I mean, just recently I had a kid send me a message that I coached this kid 25 years ago, and he sends me a message about when I had to take him through a discipline circuit, and how when we were finished, I told him, and he remembered what I said. He said that I told him, "Hey, you're one of the last guys I thought I'd ever have in here. This isn't going to happen again, is it?" And he said he took that because he said, "You focused on moving forward. You didn't focus on the mistake I made. You helped me focus on moving forward from that." So it's just things like that too, that just the opportunities you have to help kids, athletes, and they are kids to grow and move forward and do some things. It's so fun to see them do things, a lot of obviously physically, that maybe they didn't think they could do. They didn't believe they could do it, and then to get them to do it and get them to believe more in themselves. I mean, yeah, that's just something. Again, I told my wife, every now and then I think about just, man, I just like to maybe sit back and relax, and then, you see, I get a message like that from a kid, and it's like, oh man, I want to get back in there. I want to jump in the middle of it again. But I'd say that's the big thing for me that just kept me going all those years.
Beautiful. The there was a another episode where I was just doing a tutorial on mindset for athletes and getting out of their head and taking a weak mindset and changing it. And one of the things that you highlighted just now was that exact same example. If you want to take a thought pattern out of your head, you can say, "Hey, don't think about that," or try to erase it, but it's still going to be in your head a little bit. So then you have to, what I call it is, if you remember those VHS days with the videotape, like
Oh,
you
yeah.
you could erase it, but if you recorded something over it, then you got a better shot at the whole new episode on TV or wherever you recorded. So the guy had a mistake. You addressed it, but now you, instead of rehashing it and ingraining it further in their head, you erased it and said, "Hey, we're focused on going forward." So now the whole their thought process has a shift. Not only do you not focus on what you don't want to focus on anymore, you give them a new direction on what to focus on next, which was huge. So I like that approach. It's not just, "Hey, don't think about it anymore." All right, well, what do I think about that? So you told them that. So I love that. Um, and you're right, the coaching, because a lot of times it could be thankless. A lot of times it could be, there's other areas that could be more profitable, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, I had this one lady, and humbly, I published a book, and and this lady bought it, and she was a former athlete I had trained. She was an adult, and she moved away from Indiana, has a number of kids, but she messaged me out of the blue about a year ago, and she said, "Hey Jim, I'm reading your chapter on never quitting. The word sisu from Finland. I'm reading your chapter on that, and it's helpful because I'm going through skin cancer right now." And I'm like, well, when I wrote that, it wasn't geared towards anyone suffering. It was just whatever challenge you're in, you just keep going. She goes,
Right.
"Yeah, I just applied the same way, and it meant a lot." So someone I had heard from for years, to your point, there are moments that create a wrinkle that impact them, a little wake or a wave, and years later, it still resonates. So the impact, we're called here to be the best versions of ourselves and build ourselves and do what we can. So you clearly done that with athletes, but now it looks like you're in a different role where you're coaching coaches more.
Yes.
right? So now
Yes.
that you're building coaches, not just athletes, why the shift and how's that going?
Well, it kind of started with the little thing of COVID when we were all at home. That was part of it. And I was looking for the next coaching job. And obviously, during that wasn't a great time to be looking for jobs. Um, and then I was approached about that position. And I just felt like maybe at that point in my career, finally, it was maybe time to step away. I didn't know. I thought I still might get back into coaching if the right situation came along. But I saw it as an opportunity to still help and be a part of a field that I just loved and had been great to me in the area of strength and conditioning. And like I say, maybe not so much helping athletes now, which I'd hope to still do that some, but like I say, helping, and I say young coaches, but we have not just young coaches in our program, but yeah, just giving back to the profession and helping coaches try to find ways to be better. And so it's been great. Our program's going strong. It's about a little over 5 years old now. And so yeah, I'm enjoying that. Probably the one thing it took, the biggest thing for me to adjust to was being remote and working that job remotely when I'm so used to the personal interaction with people. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, I don't even get to meet most of my students in person unless I see them at a conference or at the graduation ceremonies. And so that was the biggest adjustment of it. So you do what you can, through the messages and doing that stuff and phone calls, Zoom meetings or whatnot you get from time to time. But still, it was an opportunity for me to try to, like I say, give back to the profession and try to help coaches along the way.
You mentioned Max Scherzer a couple times. You have Heisman winners. You are on a team of national champions with Barry Switzer, NFL players, MLB. What is there one or two things that's different between the years for them? You said one of the things you mentioned before was growth mindset and consistency when we and I were talking before. Can you unpack that? What's between the years that's different in those folks?
Yeah, I think it's not being afraid of a challenge, being able to understand what they're good at, but also, like I say, when I talk about a growth mindset, understanding where they need to improve and not being afraid of, obviously, and that's where you see some of those changes. I will use Max as an example. Max realized after his freshman year, like, hey, I need to get better in these areas. And so the summer after his freshman year, in between going into his sophomore year, he really dedicated himself to improving in his craft, pitching a baseball and getting better. And he was just an avid weight room guy. And he talked about it at times. He's talked about taking that mentality and that focus intensity from the weight room onto the field with his focus and intensity with what he needs to do on the mound. And which has kind of been his whole persona now. And he still he goes, yeah, he goes, a lot of guys think I'm crazy. I just do what I think is right. And, but I think, yeah, that's the biggest thing you see is, they're not afraid of work. They're certainly willing to go do what needs to be done, and whether that's most of the time physically, in the weight room, it's mentally as far as what they're doing, what they're thinking, their preparation that they do. That's another thing that just how they prepare physically and mentally to take care of their bodies and whatnot. I mean, those are things that I see that, like say, if you really go across the board, you could pull those things out for a lot of those guys that were really successful.
How do you diagnose what Max needs to work on next, whether it's physical or mental or both? You say you needed to work on things mentally and physically. How'd you diagnose what they were and what were they specifically?
Well, I mean, obviously on the baseball side, some of his pitching coach, who would, had some things. He said, "Hey, here's some things that you need." And that part of it, I'm like, "Yeah, you guys got that." You don't
Sure.
want me helping him with his pitches, that's for sure. The only time I played pitcher was in T-ball, and that tells you how good I was. But you just look at some things. We honestly, it's funny. I've shared this with him at times. We used to do even some evaluations on him from work ethic. How hard did they work? How strong was their work ethic? And his was just okay his freshman year. How were they at leaders? How were they, we had several categories that we'd look at, and he honestly was kind of average. And we would sit down with our athletes and tell them, hey, here's some, your work ethic's okay, but you need to be better here. And really, the way you approach this. And again, that's where he really stepped it up. And when he came back, it was, yeah, he was really getting out. I mean, he was ready to get after it. And he knew that he needed to develop physically. I mean, he's still obviously to this day, obviously much different than what he did in college now that he's 41, I think 40 years old. Um, but he still trains with a focused intensity, I like to call it. And he does, all right, he says, I don't do this anymore. Like say, I said, you're still not back squatting. All right. He goes, no, I can't do that anymore. I'm too old, but I'm doing this still at the same focused intensity, but it's, what his body needs now. But, yeah, that's where I go back to one of my mentors too, a guy named Joe Jurassic that was with a college head strength coach, was with the Dallas Cowboys for about 12 years. And one of the things he talked about at times was, man, I just take roll and pay attention. And that always stuck with me, and as there's a lot to be said for just paying attention to your athletes and watching them, seeing what they need. A lot of times you can tell just by when they walk into the room of what's going on. But, I think it can go much deeper than that. But yeah, just watching and paying attention, you can try to see some things with each person. And like say, Max, Tanner, some of the guys that I had the pitchers that were the really elites, when I would get them the day after they pitched too, my first question would be, how do you
Do you
feel?
feel? Yep.
And let's go from there. What do we need to do today? And so, because they're all different. But that's kind of to me about the paying attention too. A lot of times I could probably know already just by watching how they went about their business up to when they got to me. But yeah, I think a lot of can be said for just pay attention.
Got it. Got it. When we're done today or tomorrow, I'm gonna send you this tool that I created on assessing people's minds and their bodies, and just tell me what you think. I'm looking for feedback, and so I think it might be a worthwhile exercise. One of the things I wrote down or have in my notes about what you had prepared for my homework was give respect to get respect, be authentic and consistent. So I love everything about that. Now, you're working in a room of alphas off and on. Some are quiet alphas, some are loud alphas, some are not alphas and they suck and they're a little quiet and loud, right? How do you go about building a culture that gives respect to receive respect, be consistent and authentic?
One of the things I know me personally, I always try to, when I say be consistent, I always want to be the same person when I walked in the room. I mean, we all have, our ebbs and flows, but I didn't want to ever walk in the room myself as a coach and then be on eggshells going, uh-oh, what kind of mood's he in today? Um, but I think that again, you have to have an understanding. I used to call it investing in the relationships. You got to invest in the relationships with your players. Again, you're going to understand better of where they're coming from. So if you can understand where they're coming from, you can deal with the situations that might arise, or to help a guy who might be quiet um, get to where he needs to be, or maybe understand why a guy is being so loud, and why he is the way he is. And I just feel like a lot of times that, because it could be obviously a wide variety of reasons. Um, and I think it's a little different now with some of the athletes as it was even years ago, just because of the world of college athletics now. But that was a big thing for me. That was my term for it, investing in the relationship, so that I could understand where they were coming from and try to be able to deal with situations how they need to be dealt with, because it's always going to be different. I mean, you might have to, and as you know, some of those guys, you got to get in their face a little bit and not be afraid to do that. Again, you can do it respectfully, and other guys, you just got to go up and say, "Hey, man, I need you to pick it up a little bit. You're just, whatever it is, you just whisper something in their ear, and I got you, coach, and they're good, they're on." And but you got to understand that. And again, I didn't always understand. I had to learn that at times, even as I went through my career. I had some players that sometimes it takes a little longer to figure some of them out, but I think if you put forth that effort too, I mean, I had one player that was he and I butted heads a lot. And I was probably, and there was a time or two I took the wrong approach. And when I was in front of the team, I told the team, I said, you know what? I was wrong when I approached him that way. And they appreciate that too for a coach to say, hey, I was wrong. Um, and I meant this, it didn't work. So I was wrong. But you know what's funny is that guy who's coaching now, reached out to me not long ago and said, "Hey, coach, man, I'm dealing with some stuff with my team. Will you help me? And then will you meet with my team to give them some mental skills stuff and talk about some things?" And so, that let me know that, man, we're good. We butted heads and sometimes, but bottom line is, as I told him, I always wanted him to know where I was coming from. I might not always do it perfect, but my whole goal is to help you be the absolute best you can be.
Mm.
And that anything I'm coming at you with or whatever, that's my whole purpose. And if I do it wrong, I'll be the first one to admit I did it wrong. But my whole purpose is to get you to be as good as you can possibly be.
When we talk about training the athlete's body, and you're a strength coach, right? High level strength coach. If I say consistency, intensity, or patience, which of those three, consistency, intensity, patience, which of those three does the athlete or young coaches get wrong more often?
Patience might be one. Yeah. Obviously everybody wants it quick.
Yep.
I think that might be the biggest one. I mean, I don't know if intensity to some degree because their intensity can be, hey, I need to be right here, but also understanding intensity, no, at this point I need to be down here. I think consistency of being consistent across the board excuse me, is so important. But I would say probably patience as much as anything could be, because as coaches, everybody, we all want it to happen right now. But that's where the consistency, if you'll just be consistent with it and learn some patience, good things are going to happen for you.
I was watching this one speech from this mentor of mine, and he was asked about how to be more patient. And he goes, you guys simply need to figure out something else to do in the time required. So if I'm sitting there at the checkout line and it's a half hour and I'm getting impatient, I'm getting angry. Well, if I found something to do for a half hour, I wouldn't feel so upset. Or if it's a couple minutes. Or, hey, I need to be patient on my growth in the weight room. Well, it might take years to go from a 200 back squat to a 405 back squat, right? It might take a couple years. But if you're tracking wins in your accessories every time you're in the weight room, then every day you have wins in your accessories, you know the big lifts are going to come along. So his approach was find something else to measure that leads to that bigger goal. Because I was like, well, shoot, man, just be patient. I'm like, well, I don't want to. I'm not going to try to. And if I'm not going to try to be more patient, I won't feel that difference. But if I could redirect my focus into something else, okay, that might work. It's a little
Well,
hack.
yeah, you try to figure like just one day at a time, or like say hey, were you better at this today than you were last week? Yeah, well, all right, that's a win.
Right.
And I think that's what sometimes you got to get your athletes to understand the smaller picture a little bit. I've talked to some guys I worked with and said, hey, how about I know you want to have a great season next season, but right now you got the month of June. What do you want to accomplish in the month of June in the weight room or with your film study, whatever? Just pick two or three things that you want to do for the month of June and let's get that knocked out. All right. And just focus on that. Because if you do that, then we're going to focus on July. And then we're going to look at camp. What do you want to get accomplished during camp, preseason camp? And all those things that are going to set you up. If you do these things when you get to the season, now you're sitting to where you want to be. But if you're just focused over here on the season, I used to use back in the weight room at Missouri a lot of times. I say, hey, if we want to get up there to the cardio area, what do you got to do? I say, you got to take one of those steps at a time up the stairs. And so it's just everything's like that. You just got to be happy about that one step you made, and you can celebrate the small stuff. There's nothing wrong with that to
For
get you to
sure.
the big picture of what you ultimately want to do.
Mhm. 30 plus years, in strength and conditioning. What are some of the big changes you've seen in that industry, and what are some of the tried and true methods that will never go away?
Obviously, the sports science that's become a part of it now, just the things that, that are out there, to use, all the different, the equipment that's been developed, a lot of the measurables, the things that they can measure. I mean, we thought it was big when heart rate monitors came out, and you could do that. But now, the things, even when the GPS units first came out, this is the things that, so I think the science that, and when used the right way, certainly, I always joke at times that we operated for a long time pretty successfully without a bunch of that stuff. But I think it certainly can be beneficial. I've seen where it's been beneficial, that people do it. I think, as long as you don't lose the personal aspect of it, I think there's still sometimes, if you're buried so much in that, you forget that there are actual people out there that are performing, and you got to be. I still go back to, years ago. I heard a podcast with Tony La Russa from the old St. Louis Cardinals. I said, "Man, analytics are great, but I'm still a big believer in what I call my visual analytics. I believe what I see, more than anything. And obviously, a guy like that who's been around, you know what it looks like, so you know what you're seeing, and you trust that. But man, it's still, there's a reason why people still bench, squat, and clean. I think those are, there's a reason for those. And so I think those are the stable. You still got to do the basics right and do them well, to have the most. I think you don't need to try to reinvent the wheel. um, there's still some basics. Again, you got to be consistent with it. You got to have some intensity to it and have that patience. But yeah, those three are still key elements of a good program, I think.
Yep. New athlete walks in tomorrow, and you can only fix one thing first. How do you prioritize and execute as you're doing an assessment on this athlete? What needs to be fixed first?
Well, obviously, let's see, and that's another thing. There's so many things you can do now. The tests you can put them through, but I think it starts with a conversation too. I think I want to see where his mindset's at,
Okay.
and see where his thought process is at. How motivated is this guy, or yeah, how hungry is he? Just, I know that might sound, but I want to see how deep can I get right off the bat. If this guy's super hungry and ready to go, all right, let's put together. Obviously, there's going to be some physical assessments that we do, and we'll take him through some things to look at different stuff, how he moves and this and that. But yeah, I want to see where his mindset's into, because we might have to start real basic.
Mhm.
But for me, because that's where it's got to happen first. If he's not got it right there, then that's gonna determine a lot on how we approach the different things.
I don't know that you can move much forward at all with someone with the wrong mindset, because you're asking them to make not necessarily a decision, but a commitment. We're gonna
Yeah,
be at this place before time, stay late. You're gonna go without a lot of leisure, right? You're gonna Everything's gonna be dictated. You don't get to do all the fun things. There's no one's joining a fraternity when they're playing football, right?
no,
None of that's happening. So the level of commitment, the level of fear,
yeah,
eh, the level of trust, any pain in the background, right?
yeah.
What's going on there? Because all that, once you have someone who's committed and driven, well, now it's just educate and work. It's super easy. But
Yeah, well,
if
and
you
I
gotta,
think that is where, it goes back to, we as strength coaches are asking them to do a lot of really hard things.
hmm
And a lot of things, as you met, like things that they may have not done before. They didn't think they could do it before. Um, but they should be able to. But yeah, you got to get in there. It goes back to where I said investing in that relationship. Yeah, they got to understand what your purpose is too, to help them. And again, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to build that. Again, I talked about being consistent. You got to be that same person, but they got to understand that you're there to help them, and you're there to I mean, again, where are you coming from? I'm here to help you be better. That's what I ask a lot of times the athletes I work with some now. And so I said, hey, what can I do to help you?
Yeah. Yep.
That's why I'm here. What can I do to help you?
The thing is that sometimes they don't know they want it, or they don't know that they need it, or they could be resistant. But once they trust you and believe in what you're doing, then moves the ball so much easier. You worked with so many All-American, Cy Young Award winners. What do you want athletes that you built to say about you, Scott?
Well, I like the fact that, yeah, that I was, again, I use it a lot, but the word consistency, I'd say consistency and accountability were two of the strong points of my career. I was going to be that same person. I would consistently hold you accountable to a standard.
Hmm.
Um, and that I feel like I've had a lot of them tell me that. I mean, they still talk about, hey, if we said touch the line, you better touch the line, and how those things can carry over. Again, not just in athletics, but I still have from time to time guys reach out to me with messages about just instances like that. Hey, do you remember when so and so wouldn't touch the line and you made us run all this extra? And but they understand it was about doing the things right. Uh, and being consistently doing things right. And that's going to put you in the best position to have success. But I'd say those two things that I was consistent in, holding my athletes accountable to a high standard. I think I was, as much as I could possibly, I try to always be as fair as possible. I'm sure there were times that I might not have been, but I tried to be as much as I possibly could. Again, I tried to make sure when I made a mistake in something that I said, "Hey, that was a mistake. That's on me." But I feel like hopefully they say that, "Hey, I pushed them to get the most out of what they had," and they appreciated that I was able to help them accomplish some things maybe they didn't think they could accomplish.
Beautiful. You still listen, Scott?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I'll ever stop.
What do you like to listen to?
Well, I'd say it kind of goes back and forth between some classic rock or some blues rock, as my blues rock station. But yeah, probably a lot of classic rock. It depends on the day too. If I need a little extra, it might be a little bit heavier rock, but that's still the mostly what it is.
This next question I'm going to change. I usually ask for a bucket list adventure you haven't done yet, but what's a sporting event you haven't been to that you think, man, it'd be cool to go watch?
Well, the College World Series. I've never been. I can't believe I've never been. And I've heard nothing but how phenomenal it is and what a great experience it is. So yeah, College World Series I think would be something that I'd love to go experience.
Oklahoma just whooped on North Carolina 2 out of 3, and
Yeah,
you saw Switzer and Stoops in the stands. They call it the greatest show on dirt for a reason, So
yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Well,
What's your
and one of my former athletes, Tony Vitello, who was at Tennessee, just what was it, 2 years ago? I guess 3 years ago now. I had won it there, and so I was watching when those guys, won it. And yeah, I've known some people that have had a chance a lot of people that go up there and enjoy it. So yeah, that's one that I still can't believe I haven't done it, but I'd like to do it at some point.
awesome favorite sport movie?
Any of the first four Rockies.
Beautiful, right? What's your favorite sport to watch?
Football, college football.
Who's been your favorite athlete in any sport, living or dead, to watch?
Wow. I think it'd be close between maybe Walter Payton and Larry Bird.
Beautiful. Favorite book? Do you have a book recommendation for us?
You know, I've read the last one I just read is sitting right over there called The Power of Positive Habits by John Gordon. It's a great one, but I think back, I share this one a lot because it changed a lot for me. I still remember in 1997, I read Jimmy Johnson's book called Turning the Thing Around about when he got to Dallas from Miami. And I didn't know Jimmy Johnson had a degree in sports psychology, and
Wow.
just reading about how he talked to his players, changed my thinking on how I talk to my players, even in the weight room, and kind of lit the fire for me when it came to the mental side of the game. But
Beautiful.
that's one that always stands out to me because it had an influence on me.
I'm writing that down. You gotta now this could be fictional or real life. You got a hero and a villain that you like?
I grew up watching Batman a lot, so I'd
Oh, yeah.
have to go with Batman.
Love it. Love it.
Villain? Hmm, interesting. Yes, this might I don't know if this is a villain or not, but one of them that comes I just got the coyote from the Roadrunner.
I love that show. I love that. That's outstanding. Let's see, where are we at? What's your favorite lift?
Hmm, interesting. It'd be either incline press or military press.
Okay. You got a quote for us?
Well, that's my the days I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations, I have really good days.
Where can people find you?
I do some stuff on Instagram. I do some postings on Instagram and LinkedIn. I don't, I guess, really don't do the Twitter or X, whatever, much anymore. But yeah, the Instagram is just Birdman 8500 8500, and that's where most of my stuff I post is at.
Awesome. And for those who want to keep emailing us, do that info@athlete-builder.com. Check out our weekly newsletter, the 2-minute drill, and use the assessment tool to see where you're at. Reach out to me so I can help you guys out. Man, Scott, glad Pat introduced us. A lot of
Me too.
energy, a lot of authenticity. Learned some things, good stories. So it was entertaining, but learned some stuff. So I can't
Like I say,
ask
I'll
any.
probably remember a bunch more after we.
That's all right. So thank you for the gift of your time and knowledge and willingness to share and make an impact. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Like I say, it was an honor to be on. I appreciate it very much.
All the best, Scott. We'll see you.
Thank you. See ya.